very warm welcome to the Totally Content podcast. We're your hosts, Matt Eaton and Elisabeth Knulst. In this episode, we're looking forward to the Henry Stewart Digital Asset Management Conference in London next week. We'll be talking about some of the themes that we expect to hear and the differences between managing content in broadcasts versus Marcomms. I hope you find this useful, and we would love to hear your thoughts and experiences of the topics covered in this episode. Thank you. So, Elisabeth, I've been attending the Henry Stewart DAM Conference for several years now, and I always come away from the conference with the impression that when brands or marketing are looking for a DAM system, their expectation is that there's a single DAM. It might be a Primo or Sitecore or Woodwing or whatever, but it's a single system. That's it. In broadcast, I don't know many broadcasters that only have a single media asset management system. I think it's recognized that different parts of the workflow are best supported by different solutions. So you've got a solution that will help you around production or work in progress, but not necessarily long-term archive. In the creative department, they might be using a lightweight asset management system that is heavily integrated with an editing tool like Avid or Adobe that allows them to find clips quickly based on enriched metadata and then conform and master the final asset. Then you have heavier MAM solutions that are great at managing a video archive, and this requires managing petabytes of content stored across tiered sets of repositories, and maybe some are in the cloud, some are on premise as well. It also requires a MAM system to manage complex technical workflows that includes unwrapping different wrappers or files when they're ingested, transcoding, conducting technical QCs, automating checks for strobe lighting, etc. And then managing the distribution of assets and metadata to different platforms.
But that is so interesting because there has been a debate for many years on should we go suite or do we go to point solutions, or specialist tooling, best practice tooling for the different processes that we have. And I'm not talking the creative production and distribution process. That basic, on the lower layer, that is done in your done. And then we have our planning and distribution planning. So not the actual distribution, but the planning of the distribution and how do we maintain budgets. But those are different processes as a whole. But the whole creative production workflow should be done in a single tool. And of course, we integrate with Adobe InDesign and Photoshop and things like that to optimize and maybe have a catalog builder or something like that. But yeah, it has been, oh, you have more than one DAM. Oh, total cost of ownership. Oh, horror. So, and it's really kind of one tool fits them all, really, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. I think I guess a single DAM can work in a smaller organization with slightly simpler processes and needs. Well, look, if you're imagining an ideal world, of course you would want everything managed in a single DAM system. But I think it's too much to ask these days. It also takes too long and it's often too complex to implement.
And the market changes too fast as well. By the time you've implemented something like that, I'm super happy that nowadays it has become more common to separate product information management and digital asset management. Both tend to have some functionality of the other, but we are now coming to the realization there are two separate applications, which can of course be from the same vendor and are highly integrated.
Yeah.
Fine. But it's also about where it originates from. Because what you would see in the past, where if if you, for example, have a creative background, then you have a completely different demand to your digital asset management than whether you have more like a BI, marketing, KPI kind of input on an application. So it really all comes down to where the vendor comes from. But yeah, we have been, as consultants, we have been vocalizing for many years, like, oh yeah, one tool to rule them all. But really, no. And the question is also, why would you make that investment because smaller software packages or whatever you want to call it, they specialize on a specific need and do that in such a way that it's done so well that you would never be able to get that in this big suite. Make everybody happy.
Exactly that. And I think it's actually a human problem more than a technology problem. Obviously, having a monolithic system has its own technical challenges, but mostly I think it's a human problem because with a single system, you have to get all the stakeholders across the different departments, um, potentially across different geographies, agreeing on how they will use the dam, each with their own different priorities, different ways of, articulating their needs. It's just politically very complex and time consuming to implement. And as you say, the market and the business need have often moved on.
Yeah, it's of course also the different use cases, but the biggest problem I see, for example, with doing a PIM doing a PIM installation somewhere, it doesn't matter where. Try to get rid of Excel sheets. Just try to get rid of them. It won't work. It's just people won't let go of what they have. And it's also trying a consensus of what works for me doesn't work for you. I like pink, I like red. So what is it going to be? As you say, it's almost, when you do these kind of implementations, you should not be a democracy for sure. But then you come into the problem where as if, do you let a manager decide on the requirements for people within the operations, or do you let the people in the operations come to the requirements? Who's using your solution?
And talking about requirements, obviously with multiple systems managing content with specialist solutions at different steps, metadata and data governance requirements become critical to support the end-to-end workflow. Um, and I'd be interested, Elisabeth, to hear your view on metadata standards and technology, because I remember working in 2004, 2005, creating huge spreadsheets documenting enterprise-wide metadata standards based on Dublin Core, imagining future use cases and scenarios for the MAM system. And I can guarantee only a very small proportion of the metadata schema was actually ever used. So where do you stand on defining metadata standards up front?
Of course, as a master of science in library studies, I have an opinion on how it should be done. But as you say, we can make elaborate models. It's not being done. It also comes down to just having the time and resources. Not many organizations have a librarian. Let's call it, I think that's the term nowadays. Have a librarian that tags, that does the tagging, and we have, of course, AI and machine learning, but that requires an investment as well. So what I notice is that tagging is not being done. Taxonomy is difficult for normal people. Let's call them normal people, the non-nerds, the non-librarians, to get their head around, how you organize your folders. It's as simple as, how do you organize your folders on your own computer? Some go by account, other people go by topic. Luckily, a lot of DAM applications and content management applications allow for a range of ways of doing that. So you can have filters, and you can have your all massive taxonomy list. You can do lots of keywording. It can pick it up for you, because if you've organized it in here, we kind of assume that it belongs in there. You can pick up details now from an asset directly into your keywording. So there are ways, but ultimately it comes down to people not doing it. Yeah. And you can keep telling people, if you do it, you can find it back better. And it's so much easier if you do it, because it will help everybody. And ultimately, yeah, that's not the driver for people to make that change. So there are many ways of simplifying these things, or leaving it behind, using technology to get it done. And nowadays, majority of marketers and people working in marketing, they expect a Google-like search. So I just type something in and something comes up. And if you then tell them that doesn't work like that, we can try, but and when you start talking Boolean operators, you just see them going like, oh, well, go away. So yeah, we can have 100 more webinars about taxonomy and web. We can have 100 more webinars on taxonomies and metadata. Yeah, it's not being done. Yeah. So unless you have the luxury of a librarian.
I love the term librarian, and I think we really need to get a librarian on the show at some point. It sounds great. One thing that I think is really important when it comes to metadata is having a small, consistent set of metadata, a minimum set of consistent data that all systems managing content in the workflow will support. For example, an asset ID, a GUID, the name, etc. And of course, the other part that comes into all of this is how the asset can be used and the intellectual property rights associated with the content. It's an important but difficult capability to establish and implement.
That is also, we've been talking about IP for so long in marketing. Yes, there are a lot of companies aware, especially when it comes to stock images and stock materials and things like that. But honestly, again, there's a lot of, I've had, I think, about 5 or 6 projects where I could just fund the implementation of a DAM system based on licensed materials. So making sure that the licensed material was used within the terms of the license. Because the amount of infringements and the amount of fines that they had to pay were tremendous. So I could already fund the whole DAM project based on that. Still, I see a lot of IP rights being, ignored.
So lots more topics to discuss on the Totally Content podcast. Elisabeth, I know you'll be chairing the Henry Stewart London DAM Conference over the 2 days that it's on next week. That's Thursday the 27th and Friday the 28th of June. And I'll be chairing a panel first thing 9 a.m. on the Friday morning on the evolution of the DAM system, keeping up with changing business needs. Elisabeth and I will be back on the podcast after the conference to update you on what we saw. Thanks for listening. Bye.